This morning, the SABC is exclusively reporting on dozens of bogus primary schools in the backyards of homes in Ivory Park on Gauteng's East Rand. None of the schools are registered with the Gauteng Department of Education. Apparently, Zimbabwean nationals comprise most of the teachers at these schools. Mahlako Komane joins us from there. Very good morning to you, Mahlako. What's the story all about?
Good morning, Desiree. We are indeed here at Ivory Park in Tembisa, where there is, we uncovered quite a number of these bogus primary schools that are being run in people's backyards, inside shacks. I mean, the conditions themselves are very appalling. These schools are claiming to be private schools. We have a parent. In fact, this morning we went back to the school because we had obviously notified the department that this is the story that we were running and this was what was happening. And we came back here to children still being at these schools. It was school as normal. But later on, we saw some parents actually coming in with their children wanting to inquire what was it that is, what is it that's going on, that they had seen this on SABC News yesterday and they wanted to know. I have one parent in particular that tells us that he had taken his children out. He has two children two girl children at these schools. He had taken them out last year at a school in Venda. He's currently employed in Johannesburg, and he just felt that he wanted to be closer to his children, and he, for that bonding experience and that parenting experience. And he says that he inquired, but I'm actually going to talk to him as Mr. Ndo, and he's just going to tell us what was it that he experienced when he went and asked the people here what was it that was going on. Ndo, thank you so much. Can you just kindly what was it that when you went to inquire here this morning, we saw that you were very upset, saying that you weren't aware this was a fake school?
You know what? The first time when I come here at this school, I get the number for and called them and asked them, the school is registered. And I go there at the school, they said the school is registered. When I saw this thing on TV, I was highly disappointed about it. Yeah.
And you were just telling us, if you could just raise your voice a little bit, you're just telling us how much you're paying every month for your children.
I'm paying 850 for every month for this school. 850 every month. Yeah, but I was really disappointed because my children are stranded now, up so far now. What can I do? What can I do?
Okay, thank you. Now, you just heard, Desiree, that that was indeed one of the parents that came out, that we found at one of these schools, particularly the school that's being run in a church, the school that's been run in a hall. He has two children. They're saying that he's paying 850 Rand. He's been paying this since the end of January for his children. And he was really shocked and appalled to find out that his children were in a fake school. When we spoke to the principal earlier on, he had indicated to us that he had registered his school with the Department of Trade and Industry. Now you'll understand and know that this cannot, you obviously would register a company. He showed us CPI company documents of a school that is registered as a business, not necessarily a school. And we understand that none of these schools, when we engaged with the Department of Education yesterday, they then told us that none of these schools are registered. They didn't know any of these schools. The gentleman, Mr. Ndlovu, is actually behind me, went on and told us that while he'd read the Constitution and he registered the school in line with the Constitution. When I tried to quiz him about which Constitution, as far as I understood and I knew, he had to register the private school with the Department of Education in the province, which they're saying that they don't have any paperwork of any of these schools here. We also earlier on went to a house also in another part of this area, and there was also a school. In fact, it's those 4-room houses, and they're at the back. There's a shack there with children. The gentleman there, when we tried to find out what was going on, very aggressive, telling us that we needed to come back with police. There were no children. Meanwhile, we could see children moving up and down wearing school uniform.
Mahlako, you might be reporting on this in Ivory Park, but this practice, do we know other parts of the country where it's prevalent?
Well, we obviously cannot speak of any other parts of the country that I'm aware of, but you will obviously know that it's we cannot rule it out. Parents are very trusting. Parents, they take the word of the person. Nobody is expecting somebody to wake up one morning and decide to run an illegal joint. I don't think it's something that is particularly only happening here in Ivory Park, but it's very rife here. You understand that this is an informal settlement as well. It's an area with surrounded by informal settlements. When we actually asked parents, what was it that made them to go to these schools? Because this is one of those no fee paying schools. Like if you look around the area, the government schools here are schools that would not necessarily see parents paying those 400 or 500 rand a month per child. And they specifically told us, in fact, a couple of parents that we spoke to say to us they were chasing English. And I said, what do you mean you're chasing English? They're like, well, when their kids come home, they speak English. And this is one of the reasons they thought they were getting a private education, because these schools are billed as private schools, English medium schools. But also yesterday, quite interesting that one of the man that we spoke to, a pastor at the church there, when we quizzed him as well and we asked him what was going on there, and the pastor went on to tell us that they weren't running a school, that rather it was a project that they were running, that they were not paying. But later on, when we came here today and we spoke to parents, the parents are saying, I've been paying 400 rand a month, and they told us, they told us that this is what they've been paying every month, but which was contrary to what the pastor told us, that they were running a project to help children that are not documented or have parents that are not documented to get some sort of education. And then when we asked them that, do they even know what's going on in the curricula of the GDE? They're like, I know, they were just helping them so that they don't fall behind. So it's very, very concerning. But also the conditions that we found here were really, really scary. I mean, when you look on the floor, they were running on both ends of this establishment. Also the live wire that we found to be on the ground, electricity. I mean, you must understand this is in the play area. When you look at the bathrooms, it's pit latrines, very unhealthy, very the sanitation is of a poor quality, if we can even call it sanitation as well. But also what was quite amazing was that all these children were huddled up in this hall that during the weekends, I suppose, would turn into a church. But when you go there and they're all teaching them, the entire primary school was held on into one church. And there was another one as well, where we also went down the road and we happened to get the Afrikaans teacher who tells us he failed matric, but he's teaching Afrikaans. So you wonder, what is it that is being taught to these children? Is it in line with what is the basic education stipulates that children at this particular age should know this? And when we spoke to some of the teachers at another school telling us that they have diplomas from the University of Zimbabwe, one particular one told us that, and she could not tell us whether she had converted her qualifications or whether they were accredited, whether she followed the necessary processes that go with that. When we ask for the owners of the school, the stories are conflicting, the stories are different. So it's a really, really scary situation that is happening here. And Desiree, I'm talking about hundreds of children. I'm not just talking about 10, 20 children here. I'm talking about a huge number of children that this is happening to.
Mahlako, one imagines that this revelation necessitates a transfer of these kids. Have you been able to have that conversation with the Gauteng Department of Education in terms of how they're going to bring these kids into the formal schooling system?
The department, when we quizzed them on the question, all they could really tell us at that particular point was that these schools were not legal. As to what was their plan going forward, we will definitely be asking them that as again today, will they be taking these children out, as we have indeed made them aware that this is the situation. You'd understand this is what we can say is the MEC's backyard. I mean, we know that the MEC of Education is from Tembisa. It's very concerning that this type of illegality is going on at this rate and so brazenly. I mean, one of the ladies we spoke to yesterday was very brave to tell us that This is happening everywhere. You know, this is happening everywhere. You are not the only one. So that seems to be a culture of some sort of disregard for the law, that all you need to do is basically register a private company and you and I can start a school tomorrow morning, Desiree.
Shocking, doesn't even start to describe this development. We'll continue to follow that story. Thank you so much for that update, Mahlako.